When darkness falls upon an English country graveyard, there are few folk brave enough to walk amongst the mortal remains of the dead. Every headstone has a tale to tell of souls long departed, and for anyone interested in things supernatural, there's no better place to be at midnight, the witching hour. 'Tis now the very witching time of night, when churchyards yawn and hell itself breathes out contagion to this world. Now could I drink hot blood, and do such bitter business as the day would quake to look on. William Shakespeare, author of these blood-curdling lines, certainly appreciated the power of a graveyard and a good ghostly apparition, not to mention a toiling, boiling and bubbling witch thrown in for good measure. The great bard of Avon's plays are interwoven with stories of the paranormal, reflecting an age in Old England's history when anything beyond human understanding belonged strictly to the realm of superstition, folklore, and the supernatural. And so it has continued through the centuries, with natural-born storytellers like Shakespeare fueling the nation's love of a terrifying tale. There's nothing to compare with sitting too afraid to even move a muscle by the fireside's flickering light, listening to ghostly goings-on from long ago. Unfortunately, this is one old English tradition, just like the ghost story itself, that'll never be allowed to die and rest in peace. This programme is not for the faint-hearted, and as we go in search of the ghosts and witches that have chilled and petrified successive generations of thrill-seekers, watch carefully, for there are certainly some surprises in store. We'll start the proceedings by following the trail of the ghost of Charles Dickens, undoubtedly one of England's greatest writers, who was himself responsible for the fictional creation of some of the scariest ghosts of all time. Then we're off to the theatre for a sinister performance featuring phantoms and poltergeists in the otherwise charming city of Bath. Next, imagine yourself shut up in a black, claustrophobic hole for weeks on end, not knowing whether you'll ever see the light of day again, and you'll understand the terrible dark atmosphere that pervades this Elizabethan manor house in the heart of the English countryside. Becoming a modern-day witch hunter will transport us to the rural landscape of Old Warwickshire, where tales of ancient black magic rituals have a chilling degree of authenticity. And last, but not least, our ghostly quest takes a more southwesterly turn to the Celtic treasure that is the mystical county of Cornwall. With a whole host of spirit beings unique to the region, and a boastful claim of the most evil ghost in all England, there's a great deal of exploration to be undertaken. So, courage, mon ami. We will begin. No programme about English ghosts could possibly be countenanced without mention of Charles Dickens, perhaps the most popular writer of ghost stories ever known. When A Christmas Carol was first published in Victorian England, the reading public of the day relished the terror that was inflicted upon Ebenezer Scrooge, the mean old miser forced to change his uncharitable ways by ghostly visitations from spirits of the past, present, and future. The spirit raised a frightful cry and shook its chain with such a dismal and appalling noise that Scrooge held on tight to his chair to save himself from falling in a swoon. Scrooge fell upon his knees and clasped his hands before his face. "Mercy!" he said. "Dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me?" The reason for Charles Dickens' setting of this story at Christmas dates back to ancient times, and the belief that the wandering spirits of the dead were not allowed to make an appearance on Christmas Day, under any circumstances. Consequently, relating ghostly tales around the fire on Christmas Eve became a traditional pastime, because when the clock struck midnight, everyone could retire to their beds, secure in the knowledge that no spook or evil manifestation would disturb their slumbers, no matter how spine-chillingly intimidating and terrifying the storytelling might have been. A Christmas Carol was a huge success, appealing to the Victorians' preoccupation with the dark, the sinister, and the downright horrible. Dickens certainly cashed in on the idea, producing a spooky tale each Christmas time, and of course other authors followed in his very illustrious footsteps, until the festive season became synonymous with this ghostly genre. It'll hardly come as a surprise, therefore, that Charles Dickens, the imaginative creator of so many well-loved ghostly characters, is himself still reputed to wander the earth as a restless spirit, haunting the cobbled streets of Rochester, the historic Kent city beloved of his youth, that influenced much of his later writing. Rochester Castle is an imposing Norman fortress where many souls will have thrived and perished in equal measure throughout the ages. Tucked safely in the castle's shadow stands the stunning Rochester Cathedral, and between the two lies an indentation of an ancient moat which serves as a peaceful graveyard for a fortunate few. This was where Charles Dickens wanted to be buried, but at the time of his death, the great and the good of the day insisted that only the grandest church in the land, Westminster Abbey, was sufficiently majestic to receive the mortal remains of such an important Englishman. But if you feel a ghostly presence, a chill in the air as you walk over this spot, or hear strange footsteps when there's no one else in sight, you could be encountering the ghost of Charles Dickens, whose elegant spirit form has often been reported lingering in the vicinity. His bones may lie in an ornate mausoleum in London, but his ghost evidently still prefers this fine Kentish ground, and drinking in the atmosphere of this remarkable location, who could blame him? Gone to a stage in any English theatre, and the adrenaline will automatically start to rush. Hands tremble involuntarily, the mouth dries, and any attempt at coherent speech will rapidly prove utterly futile. Memories of the epic terror of school productions come flooding back, making your skin crawl far more chillingly than any horror movie, and the eyes of long-departed theatre-goers seem to linger critically in the atmosphere surrounding every empty seat. But for some, this nauseous fright is what makes life worth living, because to stand before an audience and act is an intrinsic part of their psyche. To those of us who tremble at the first whiff of grease paint and the glaring limelight, this is indeed a bizarre concept. However, for the talented entertainer, acting is in the blood, as they say, and as a profession, thespians are renowned for being great respect